finished 400 books and I am here to share my top 10 favorite books of all time. My holy grails, my everything, my must-read stories and unique characters that you need in your life. We have fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, non-fiction books on this list. And now without any further ado, let's just get to it. Well, hi guys, hello, how are you? How have you been? I missed you. It's been a while since I uploaded a video, especially a sit-down video, so. But before we get to the juicy part of the video, I just want to say a huge thank you to all in person for basically making my last video go viral. It was insane. I had never experienced anything like that on YouTube. So again, I just wanted to pop in and say a huge thank you for your love and for your support. I just want you to know that I appreciate you and I do not take you or your time granted. So again, a big thank you, and I hope that you will enjoy today's video. My channel is a year old. We're a little bit older than a year. And I just realized that I'd never done a favorites video. Nobody knows out there what are my favorite books, and we need to rectify that situation. And when I mean favorite books, I mean the books that define me as a reader. Books that are important to me. Books that shaped me, that changed me, and books that discuss themes that very much align with my beliefs and with my core values. So those are the books that you will hear about in this video. And I hope that you will walk away with a couple of awesome book recommendations. But before we get to discussing the top 10 books and my all-time favorites, I just want to introduce myself to the people who are new here. My name is Zsuzsi. I am the petite reader and I make weekly bookish videos. And if this is something that sounds interesting to you and you like any of my other videos, then I think that you should definitely subscribe to my channel. You are welcome here. The first book on this list, and by the way guys, do not ask me to rank these books. It was hard enough to edit my list down to a small and reasonable number. Like, do not ask me, do not force me to rank these books because it is impossible, okay? I just wanted to put it out there. The first book on the list is The Wanderer by Peter van den Ende. This book is a silent book, or maybe some of you know silent books as picture books. And this was the first silent book that I ever read in my life. And this book is my comfort read, and I cannot even put it into words how much this book means to me. And I read it so often that honestly I do not even log it on Goodreads when I just read it, because there's no point. It's like, I think I've read this like 50 times, if not more. Okay, so what is it that I love so much about this book? Well, the fact that it is a silent book. And because the story is narrated through images, it is very much based on you and your unique life experiences, because that's what you will use to craft the story. And because of that, there are thousands and tens of thousands of millions, I don't know how many people read this book, but thousands of stories out there that are not the same. We all read the same picture book, but the stories that we made up in our heads, they are all different and unique and very personal to us. I am not going to tell you, obviously, what this book is about, because there is no point in that. What I am going to say is that this book starts out with the creation of a little paper boat. And the creators of this little paper boat set it free on the ocean. And then the story unfolds. What I need to say is that this book is my comfort read for a reason, because every time when I feel down, when I feel hopeless, especially when it comes to the future, I read this book and I get to that last page. And that last page makes me bawl my eyes out every single time, and it gives me so much hope for the future. So if you don't pick up any of these other books on my list, it's totally fine. But please, pick up this one. You are not going to regret it. And the next book on my list is The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. This book basically is a story of immigration. And that, already got me. I was like, I need to read it. But it's a story of immigration told from the point of view of a fig tree. I mean, you give me an immigration story and you give me a tree, an intelligent talking tree that tells the story of humans. I'm yours, like, say less. I don't even need to, read the synopsis. I'm picking your book up. But I don't want you to think that, it's an immigration story, I don't care, so that's just a skip for me. I don't think that this book is only for immigrants and for descendants of immigrants, though to a certain level we are all descendant of immigrants. No. I think that this book is basically for humans, as silly as it sounds, because we humans are very dynamic creatures. As we move through life, we evolve, we love, we lose, we win, we suffer, and we very rarely stay the same when it comes to our core. Even if you never leave your hometown, it doesn't matter. I don't really want to say too much about the plot, other than its dual timeline. There is a historical plot, and there is a contemporary timeline as well, and that's kind of how Elif Shafak writes all her books. And the book starts out with two teenagers, Kostas and Daphne, and one is from the Greek side of Cyprus and then the other one is from the Turkish side of Cyprus, and they fall in love. And a fig tree witnesses as they fall in love and witnesses the war that breaks out in Cyprus and how, these two lovers have to depart. And then years later, a fig tree grows in the backyard of a London house. This book is very much about belonging and identity, and asks the question, what is home? Who are the people that we meet in our lives, the people that we still have in our lives, or the people that we leave behind? And this book made me so incredibly emotional, and not just because of the topic of immigration, but because it is so human. And I loved how this book basically describes humans as trees. Trees that graft branches and grow, but still nurture their roots. And fantastic book that I highly recommend, obviously, because that is why it's on my list. And the next book on my list is A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Zsuzsi. And this book is described as a fiction book, but I am going to take the liberty and describe this book as a mystery. A mystery with sci-fi elements and Buddhist teachings. And I wouldn't expect anything less from Ruth Zsuzsi, because Ruth Zsuzsi is a Japanese-American filmmaker and novelist, and also she is a Zen priest. And this book was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. So if you don't believe me that this is a good book, then please believe the actual experts. So in this book, we follow Ruth, who lives on Vancouver Island in Canada, and she is a writer, and she's trying to write the memoirs of her mother, who is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. But Ruth herself is suffering from a terrible writer's block. And then one day, as she is walking on the beach, she comes across this Hello Kitty lunchbox, and this lunchbox contains the diary of Nao Yasutani, who is a 16-year-old American Japanese girl. This is such an intelligently written novel, because basically Ruth Zsuzsi asks us to slow down while reading this book and to really be patient with the story. One of the biggest teachings in Buddhism is the power of now. They say that human beings spend way too much time in the past and thinking about the future, when all we really have is the present. And that is what this book is emphasizing. This book is keeping you in the present, just slow down in the present. And I think that there is a big reason why the name of one of the main characters is Now, because you spell it as N-A-O, but when you pronounce it in English, you actually say now. That sounds like, you know, now. So honestly, when you read this book and as the story slowly unfolds, I was like, Ruth Zeki, the mind of that woman, the talent of this woman. I do need to give you trigger warnings. If you don't want to listen to the trigger warnings, then just skip ahead. But I do think it is very important to know when it comes to this book that this book discusses suicide and suicidal thoughts, Alzheimer's disease, World War II, and the 2011 tsunami. The next book on the list, it's already making me so emotional to talk about this book because this book just means so much to me. It makes me emotional every single time I think about it or just when I look at it, and it is on my favorites shelf, so I look at it a lot, and that is Anxious People by Frederick Backman. And this is the fiction book. This book is the book that gave me my faith back in humanity. And I know that that is kind of a big statement, but look at me sitting here saying it in front of a camera and uploading it to the internet. It is true. In this book, basically there is a hostage situation because there's an apartment open house and then everything just goes south when a failed bank robber just bursts into the apartment, and this robber basically takes this group of strangers as hostages. And obviously this is just a very simple description, but this story is not this simple. The characters held hostage in this book basically represent society, all different ages and professions, different problems and orientation, and they are all very, very anxious in their own respective lives. And on paper, we think that there is nothing common when it comes to these people. But as the story unfolds, we realize that that's actually not true. And these so different people and characters, they start building bridges. And this book is basically a lesson that each person, every single one of us, we are a complex story, and we all have an interior that we need to take the time to understand. And I'm not necessarily talking about, like, you know, understanding ourselves, which is of course very important, but when you want to understand another person, you really need to be patient, because there is more to first impressions. And honestly, the ending of this book, it made me cry. There were many scenes in this book that actually made me cry, but it was really the ending when I was like, oh my god, this book just means so much to me. And when I finished the book, that was my first thought, that, oh my god, I believe in humanity again. And the next book on my list is something that surprised me so much. This book, out of nowhere, became one of my favorite books of 2023, and that is The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Bremer. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. I think she is an Australian author, and this was a debut book last year, and I was like, how is that possible? How is that possible? Now, before you pick this book up, I want you to know that this is not an easy read, and probably the title suggests that, but this is not an easy read. At certain points, I feel that it's very philosophical, but that, for example, works with me. You know, this book discusses the meaning of life, the choices that we make in our lives, the path that we take in our lives, and discusses the topic of loneliness and wintering. So don't go into it thinking that, oh, It's a very colorful cover. This is gonna be a fun little read because it's not gonna be. Clover is a death doula. And I'm not gonna lie, before reading this book, I had no idea what a death doula was, but now I actually do, and I am very grateful for that. She is a death doula, and it basically means that she is helping the transition of people who are battling terminal illness, and she is with them at the moment of death. Now, obviously this is not an easy job, but Clover herself, just as a person, she is very withdrawn. So she is living a withdrawn life up until she meets Claudia. Claudia, one of her clients who is battling terminal cancer, I believe lung cancer, and that's when Clover's story changes and basically her life takes a 180 turn. I think that if you're somebody who's ever felt like an outsider because, I don't know, because you're socially anxious or you're just an introverted person, if you've ever been called weird or awkward, if you just like to stay in your own little cocoon, and if you ever experienced loneliness and helplessness, if you've ever asked yourself, wow, is this the right choice for me? Am I on the right path in life? Then I believe that this book is for you, because this book sees you. Well, now we are leaving the fiction books behind and we are entering the fantasy, sci-fi and non-fiction portion of this video. We have some truly awesome books here, so just stay with me. And the first book that I want to mention here is To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. And honestly, it was a very hard choice between this book and this book, but this is a series and this is a standalone. This is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. But I went with the cover because this cover is one of my favorite book covers of all time. So that's what decided, the cover. If you're somebody who doesn't like sci-fi because of the sciencey stuff, because sometimes it can get really hard to understand sci-fis, that I don't want you to get discouraged, because the Becky Chambers sci-fis are character driven. And she has such amazing character work and character arcs in the book. And she has very special and very diverse characters or set of characters. It's fantastic. In my humble opinion, nobody does sci-fi as Becky Chambers. She not only excels at writing the characters, but also the way she writes about human connection and adopted families. It is something that you need to experience, and it shines in every single one of her books. But this is the one, honestly, that truly I would recommend. And I was sucked into this book basically from the first sentence, because it says, if you read nothing else we've sent home, please at least read this. And I'm like, okay, girl, I'm here for it. I'll read it. Give it to me. Now, imagine a future where humans, instead of terraforming planets to be able to sustain human lives, we, through temporary genetic modifications, we change our bodies to adopt that particular chosen planet. Now, Ariadne and her fellow crewmates, they are all astronauts, they are all scientists who are traveling from planet just for the sake of science, just for the sake of discovery, just for the sake of studying. You know, they are not trying to colonize those planets for humanity. And then they send whatever findings they have on that particular planet, they send it back to Earth. But because, you know, this is space travel and it takes a lot of time, Earth home is changing from decade to decade. And now something has really changed on Earth because, for example, the country where Ariadne was born into, that just doesn't exist anymore. And also the funding of space discovery, it's changed. And it seems that Earth is not really interested anymore in the data. Now, I don't want you to think, based on this description, that this book is like, you know, about the plot or that this is an adventure book, because it is not. It is not like an Andy Weir book. No. There is no adventure here. Basically, you just just get to watch the scientists doing their everyday scientific work. And while they are doing this work, you get musings and you get questions about humans, the role of humans in space, how we study extraterrestrial life. And there are a lot of moral dilemmas and ethical questions discussed in this book. And I ate it up. It was so good. It was amazing. Oh wow, guys, the next book is the fun book. This is now the fun portion of the video. And that is Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, my first ever romantic fantasy. And I don't even want to say it. I don't want to describe it as romantic fantasy. I want to describe it as a romantic fantasy comedy, because I personally think that that's what this book is. You all know that I am freaking obsessed with T. Kingfisher. This was not my first book from her, but this is easily, in my humble opinion, her best book. So this book is about Hala. And Hala is a widow, and she was also the caretaker of her great uncle, who was an artifact collector. And when he dies, he leaves all his money and all the estate and everything, the whole collection, to Hala. But Hala's family, the family on her late husband's side, they want her to marry her brother-in-law, because we're talking about a lot of money, and they don't want Hala to have this money. They kind of like want to put their filthy little paws on her money, because she's just like a helpless woman and she doesn't know anything, she cannot manage herself, blah 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 blah. They just want the money. And then Hala is like, no fucking way, I am getting out of this marriage. But the only way to get out of this marriage is to actually kill myself. And she selects a sword from this artifact collection to kill herself with. And as she unsheaths the sword, an immortal swordsman, Sarkis, just pops out from the sword, and he's like, oh, hello. And our story begins. And this book is so much fun, and honestly, that's why I loved it first and foremost, because T. Kingfisher, like, she is such a funny writer, but I really like the interactions between her characters, especially if there's a little bit of romance involved. And in this book, obviously, there is a romance, because the banter between the two characters, between Hala and Sarkis, it cracked me up. But honestly, I really like T. Kingfisher for the kind of feminism that she portrays in the book. And I don't have to say that this is a feminist book, because all of the T. Kingfisher books are very feminist and I adore them. And I really liked Hala in this book. I liked her personality, just simply her personality, but also the way she was described. Like, you know, Hala was not described as a young character. She is not like a young character. She's not in her 20s. And she's not described as, you know, like the biggest beauty in the land. And I believe that she's also described as a very voluptuous character. And I just freaking adore that. Like, you know, that we see something that's a little bit different. And even Sarkis, like, Sarkis is not described as Cassian, okay? He is not Cassian 2.0. He is described as like a big Viking warrior, but with a very filthy mouth. You never read T. Kingfisher? Read this book. If you read T. Kingfisher before and you liked it, read this book. If you read T. Kingfisher before but you didn't like that book from her, read this one, because this is, in my humble opinion, the best book that she's ever published. I mean, I have not read like her entire backlist, but this is just like, no, she's not going to be able to top this book. Now the next book is also a fantasy romance book, and honestly I was thinking like really hard about this book. I wasn't sure that I should put this on this list, not because I don't love it, because I freaking adore this book, but it's a series and I have not finished the series because I am scared to continue the series, because I'm just like, so scared. But the first book is awesome. Even if the other books are like, you know, not gonna be able to hold up, this book is perfect, and this book means so much to me. So I decided to put it on this list, and that is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. Again, a romantasy. Now look, I read a lot of fantasy romance romantic fantasy, like whatever you want to call it. But this book truly stands out to me because the characters in this book are perfect. The female character, the male character individually, but also the romance between these two characters. The writing is just beautiful, the world building is there. Like basically there is nothing that's wrong with this book. This first book we get to meet Tisana, who was taken into slavery as a child, and she just had to survive with her wit because she is an insanely smart female character, and also with just a little bit of magic because we do have a serious magic system in this book. And slowly, over the years, she's collecting money to try to buy her freedom. And on the night when she wants to buy her freedom because she has the money, the guy who owns her, he almost kills her. But then, luckily, she gets away. And it becomes her thing in the book to save not only her best friend, who unfortunately stays behind, but also in general to end slavery. In order to do that, Tisana goes to the other part of the world because she wants to ask for the help of the Orders, and the Orders is a very powerful organization of magic wielders. But the Orders doesn't take her seriously. They say that she needs to complete an apprenticeship with Maxentarius, who is a very powerful magician in this world, before she can join the Orders. But Maxentarius, or Max, he hates the Orders, and he has a very good reason to do so. Now, just like I said, to me this book was really perfect characters, not just separately but also together. The romance was beautiful and it felt very authentic. The plot was very engaging, and honestly it was very fast-paced because this is a long-ass book, just like most of the fantasy and romantasy books are, and still it kept me engaged, it kept me entertained. So I just absolutely adore it. And I personally think that Carissa Broadbent and her writing in this book is fantastic. Everybody talks about her other series, the Crown of Nyaxia series. I think that because that was a BookTok sensation or whatever, it got really popular on BookTok. But I think that this is the book and this is the series from her that everybody should talk about, because I have no idea how Carissa Broadbent will be able to top what she did in this book. In this first book. I still have to read the other two books, but I am so scared. I am so scared for the characters. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I am really scared of the whole experience itself, because what if the second book is not good or the third book is not good? Like, I don't know. Let me know if you ever experience this feeling or if you ever feel this way. And the next book on my list is Zsuzsi by Madeline Miller. And look, I know that this is an insanely popular book. I think that this is the most popular or the most well-known book on this list, but I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it because this book means so much to me. And if you've never read this, because you don't want to read anything from Madeline Miller, I basically want to convince you that no, you should. So just listen to me. This is a feminist Greek myth retelling, but this is like a good feminist Greek myth retelling, because there are so many of these feminist retellings out there, and honestly some of them are trash. As much as I want to support them, because I want as many feminist books out there as possible, some of them are truly trash and I don't know what to say. But Madeline Miller, she is the writer of our lifetime, one of the writers of our lifetime. So, you know, if she does it, I'll take it. Now, Zsuzsi in this book is a goddess, the daughter of Helios, who is one of the Titans. But Zsuzsi, growing up, you know, she's a little bit different. She's very mundane, and the other gods and goddesses, they just don't take her seriously. They really like to humiliate her, and she doesn't feel good about it, obviously, like who would? And then she meets Prometheus, and that's when she decides that, you know what, I am an outcast in this world, but I am actually happy about it because I am not like you all. And then she discovers that she has the power of witchcraft, and unfortunately she does something really silly out of jealousy and because of a man, and everybody is threatened by her and by her powers. So her daddy decides to take her on this deserted island, and basically she is banished. She has to live on this deserted island for the rest of her life. And on this island she finds paradise instead of prison. Of course, first, she doesn't really like this situation because it is an insanely unfair situation, but then she decides just to become one with nature, to really understand herself and her powers, and she starts excelling at her craft. And there are so many very important Greek myth characters who come her way and then ultimately will change her life. And what I really like about this story is that at its core, this book is about the exploration of female voice. Female voice in Greek mythology, yes, but in general, the female voice in life. Because Zsuzsi is basically just like any other women who have lived long enough under the heels of superpower hungry men, and it's enough. But obviously, on top of this, there are so many other topics discussed in this book. It's about love and finding love and loneliness and companionship and vengeance and forgiveness and oh my god, so many like other universal ideas. And I enjoy this book so much. I absolutely adore it. Well, my darlings, we have only one more book to discuss, and that is The Power of Meaning by Emily Esfahani Smith. This is the non-fiction book that I want to talk about in this video. I am planning to do a separate video for some non-fiction books because I have some really good recommendations. I read some truly amazing non-fictions, but when it comes to my holy grails, my all-time favorite, I think that is this book. The subtitle for this book should be, or could be, like How to Stop Looking for Happiness. The message in this book at the time when I read it, it totally blew my mind. Because basically what the author describes in this book is that instead of everybody looking for happiness, have meaning instead. And I'm gonna be completely honest, when I picked up this book, like I didn't know what the difference was. What is the difference between meaning and what is the difference between happiness? And that is exactly what this author discusses in this book. Now, the build-up of this book is nothing special. Some of you might say that it is even boring because it's nothing else but a collection of psychological studies on 4 areas in our lives to find meaning and fulfillment. And these 4 areas are belonging, transcendence, purpose, and storytelling. I had to look that up because I didn't remember the 4th. Oh, this is so bad. But in these 4 areas, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie, like I truly adored everything about this book and I made so many conclusions, but if there was one section that truly spoke to me, that was the section about belonging. Because you can work on finding purpose in your life, or even when it comes to transcendence, you can understand that you are part of something bigger. But belonging, it lies with other people. It's not just about you. And because of that, our interactions with others matter. Receiving and also giving nuggets of kindness, it matters. And this book just taught me to walk and live life with an open heart. I don't know, maybe it sounds a little bit cheesy to some of you out there, but truly that's how I felt when I finished this book. It is such a fantastic book. I know that this is not as popular as it should be, but it is on my list. It is probably the best non-fiction that I've ever read in my life. Well, this is it, guys. This is the end of my list and this is the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed spending some time with me. I definitely enjoyed filming this video and I truly hope that you walk away with some recommendations. So let me know which one of these books you want to read, or if you've read any of these books, please let me know what you think about them. Hit share, like, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. I have a lot of fun videos coming up on the channel. The 2 videos that I am working on currently, I am editing them, is a 24-hour reading vlog that ended up being a little bit chaotic, I'm not gonna lie. And I am also working on a little women and my trip to Concord, Massachusetts vlog. So if that sounds interesting to you, then definitely hug that subscribe button, and hopefully I will see you soon in another video. Bye!